Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast, My Film versus My Inspiration special episode. My name is Martin Harries, your host. On this episode, I interview new filmmakers and actors about their new and up-and-coming film and the films that inspired them. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Hello, Podderoonies or Podsters, if you prefer. Welcome back to our new series of podcasts, My Film versus My Inspiration. Today, we are talking about the new film, The Dummy Detective, and their inspiration for the film noirs like The Maltese Falcon, Animal Crackers, and Agatha Christie. So, welcome, Jonathan, the writer and star of the film, and we also have Ed, who stars in it as well. Guys, welcome. It's great to have you on. I really enjoyed the film. I found it really interesting. It's a very different take on the ventriloquist type of movie. So, Jonathan, as the writer of this, so what was kind of the main idea, the number one idea for you that kind of started things off for you?
Well, I'm a professional ventriloquist. It's been my main career through most of my adult life. And I, early on in my career, tried to think of some way that I could break out of the traditional mold that people do, the way people perform, which, of course, I also enjoyed. I originally was inspired to be a performing ventriloquist, doing shows with puppet dummies, as they're often called. But I wanted to go out of the box, do something, that would be unique, that I haven't seen any other ventriloquists do before. And it was a good 30 years ago that I came up with the idea of incorporating film noir into ventriloquism, or vice versa, actually, because it's putting ventriloquism into a film noir alternate universe, because I love film noir, and that's been a particular genre that grabbed my attention and passion and fascination from long ago. So I wanted to somehow create something in that milieu, in that environment, and use ventriloquism. So I came up with the idea of a ventriloquist detective and his wooden partner.
Nice. So was there kind of when you were writing it, was there like a breakthrough moment, something that you came up with along the way, kind of made this thing like a whole picture for you, kind of thing?
It was gradual. I mean, I really don't remember a moment where, a eureka moment where it just hit me. Ventriloquist detective in a film noir universe. It's just it kind of percolated a bit. I was thinking, film noir, ventriloquism. What am I going to do with that? And then I thought, I want to play a character. How could I? Well, I'll be a ventriloquist within that world. But what would I be doing? Well, the most typical and stereotypical role is the main protagonist is a detective. Okay, so I'm a detective ventriloquist. How would I do that? Use my ventriloquism just in throwing my voice and throwing people out. Okay, but what about puppets? How could I? Oh, I guess maybe he'll be my partner. And so I guess it's little by little. And then so what kind of detectives will we be? Well, I was imagining I'd want it to be very much of that genre. I want it to be that feeling of the dark, shadowy, gloomy world where there's all kinds of double crossing going on, and femme fatales, kinds of lurid people and characters. So we'll do that. And then how would I incorporate the dummy partner? Well, I'll use that as an extra power, that use it to confuse, to misdirect suspects when I question them and things like that. So all these different elements that gradually, led to then, okay, how am I going to build this world? What's it going to look like? Pieces came to play gradually.
For you then, Ed, like, what were the particular influences on you with this part as Mr. Black? Where was your way in for this film?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Mr. Black as this kind of like dejected, abject character who's been sort of persecuted through no fault of his own, though maybe he was a little bit careless. I mean, when I was reading it and auditioning, I had this picture in my head of Peter Lorre, almost like from M.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's kind of like, the victim. At the same time, he's got a little bit of a nasty side. He's a little bit out for vengeance, not really physical vengeance, but he feels that he's been wronged and that, the world owes him a little bit of sympathy and, and support. But I just really love the idea of this guy sitting in this room at night, doing these broadcasts to maybe the whole world, maybe to one person, maybe to no one. And it was a very, just almost sort of like a dream-like kind of existence. So for me, the way into it was just really kind of tapping into a feeling of sort of loneliness, a little bit of desperation, but also like an urge to kind of like be left alone, but at the same time not completely excluded, and to have the option of sort of being among society, other people in the end, when he wanted to. I mean, I love the part. It was one of the favorite things I've done.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my most fascinating characters for sure in this. Did you ever imagine how many people did the character ever think about how many people he's actually broadcasting to, or did that really never kind of come into this character's head? He just wanted to create this show, his radio show.
I think both. I mean, I think he wanted to do the show and he felt he was actually serving like a community good by doing the show. I think he suspected there maybe was not a large listener base, but for him, even if it was just one person, like the one person who sent him an admiring note, if there's just one person out there, that's one person who didn't have to tune in every night. And even for this one person, he'd go the whole length to do the show properly. So I think the show was really probably more for him than it was for the audience anyway. So, whether it was one person or a million people, it probably didn't even really matter that much.
Yeah, because you get the sense that is he just kind of filling a void for his own kind of sanity in a way? The fact that, or is kind of Dinkle, the puppet, having
Dinky.
more of an Dinky, sorry, yeah, having more of an influence on why he's doing this show, kind of thing.
Well, that's a good question.
There's a lot of duality in your performance for sure.
No, I think in a way it's also, Dinky is sort of his alter ego, but at the same time he's also showing Dinky, look, you acted out when we were performing. You embarrassed me. You made the world think I was crazy. Let me show you I'm really not crazy by doing this nightly broadcast to maybe one person. But I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet, and you're going to have to support me, and I want you to support me on this.
So, Jonathan, then Animal Crackers was one of your influences on the film that you mentioned to me. I have not seen Animal Crackers before, so I was really fascinated to watch this, one of the classic Marx Brothers movies. And I found that kind of the gag rate is relentless. And especially with like with the dialogue in terms of the wordplay and the puns, it has great rhythm to it with all of the writing, really. And I found that the case with your film too, in kind of a slightly different way, I guess, in tone. But so how kind of hard was it to make the dialogue and the story flow with like a good pace, like Animal Crackers has?
Yeah, well, Animal Crackers is to me the greatest of the 13 Marx Brothers films. I rank it the highest. I'm a big Marx Brothers fan.
Yeah.
In general, they're my favorite comedy team. So I was very inspired in the direction of comedy that I went by my love for the Marx Brothers. Although what I do is not so similar, I don't think. In fact, in some ways, it's the opposite style because Harpo is my favorite of the Marx Brothers, the one who never talks, and the mute character. And so he being the greatest inspiration is kind of ironic because he never talks and I talk too much. I talk to everybody. But it's the kind of exuberance, the whimsy, the playfulness, the absurdity. I'd say most of all, probably the absurdist kind of humor. There's a lot of that in Marx Brothers films, absurdist kind of humor. And that is very compelling to me. And I think that's where it fits in very much in a different way, with different manifestation as a ventriloquist, bringing puppets to life, making it look and sound like they're real and creating that illusion. Or is it an illusion? Going beyond that, is there something about that? Could they actually be live in some way? That I think as I'm speaking, it's thinking out loud right now. I think that if I had to choose the one thing, it's the absurdist humor that was the main element that I was drawn to and that I draw into ventriloquism, my performances, and specifically into the produced works that I've done. specifically or mainly this feature film. This is my first feature film, but I've done a couple of shorts, and I've done a web series and a lot of other just off the cuff kind of videos. But it's all with these characters of Trillo and Suede.
Nice. That kind of leads into my next question, because with Animal Crackers, there's this kind of wackiness quality that I quite liked about it with a lot of the Marx Brothers performances to a certain extent. And there's one scene where like the professor gets a gun out and everyone flees and starts randomly shooting things, but the statues kind of come alive and shoot at him. I thought that was just genius. Probably the funniest moment for me. So obviously your film is more kind of subtle with its comedy. So kind of what was your kind of approach for the comedy in this for you?
You know, this is a script that I've written and rewritten so many drafts of for over 20 years. By the time I finally found a way to get it produced. So I worked on it very hard off and on and changing so many things to try to find just the right tone. That was a big challenge. You know, how serious to take it, how much comedy. I didn't want it to be frivolous or overly silly. What I ultimately was striving for, hopefully it works that way, is that it stands as a whodunit, as a suspenseful mystery on its own right. Also imbued with a lot of comic relief, which comes mostly just from the absurdity of a ventriloquist detective. And also people accepting that in this world, in this alternate universe where people actually do talk to the dummies, because I have a few of them in this film, the main one being Sam Suede, the detective partner. And so that kind of absurd, ridiculous universe was where I wanted the comedy to kind of just flow from without trying too hard. I didn't want it to be, I wasn't striving to make it a Marx Brothers level kind of comedy. Not that I could, not that anybody could really just make it, you know, that, as you said, like nonstop firing of gags and stuff like that. You know, I wanted to, I was influenced certainly by a lot of their elements and the characters and so forth. But, you know, it's not an outright comedy. It's a comedy mystery, but I wanted to stand as a mystery first and foremost, and a psychological thriller, I would say, with a slash mystery, but with hopefully a lot of funny, you know, moments and things that happen that are funny.
Yeah, and actually, can I jump? Can I add
Sure.
something here? Because I mean, as you know, someone, you know, as an actor in it too, the script very much lent itself. The humor was very organic, I thought, because the characters are not for the most part, the characters are not overdrawn, and they're in these situations. And actually, the more serious you took the part, and the more seriously you tried to do it, the more the humor would come out of its own. And that was one thing I thought that was like very, you know, very, very well written, very, very well done about the script. That the humor just kind of evolved because the situations lent it, rather than you're, you know, banging someone over the head with, you know, slapstick or some sort of, you know, prank or fall or something, even though I do fall down the stairs a number of times, which is funny.
Yeah, you're on the floor a lot in this.
Yeah, I'm on the. Yeah.
How was that? A few long days on the floor.
I'm sorry, I'm freezing.
Well,
again.
we didn't have much time to do anything, too many takes of anything. So luckily for Ed, he didn't have to fall too much.
Except the director said, you know, if you're comfortable falling down the stairs, you know, go ahead. You know, that's fine. So instead, I just stood we sort of took, you know, quick takes, and at the foot of the stairs, I fell forward onto a mattress, which was, you know, not that comfortable itself, but it got the effect was there.
Yeah, so that's a good reminder that there are a few slapstick moments here. So it's not all one thing or the other, but that again is under the heading of comic relief in my mind. You know, funny moments, but not the main atmosphere or gist of what I was trying to do.
What I also loved about Animal Crackers, there's a moment where Groucho Marx has his own kind of personal interlude by just like stepping forward into a closer shot, and the two actresses are kind of frozen behind in the background.
It breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, it breaks the fourth wall, exactly. You don't have anything obviously like that in your film, but it's interesting. I guess you have to make a decision on when to introduce kind of the dummy characters in the story, which inherently creates this kind of different feel in tone. So how hard was that to kind of get right tonally for you, Jonathan?
Yeah, that was a big challenge. It was a whole tricky thing. How far to go in one direction or another. That's why I did many drafts before we finally shot it, and one never knows exactly how it's going to look on screen until it's finished. But yeah, that was the big challenge about trying to strike the right balance. And people might disagree depending on what they prefer, what their tastes are. I mean, most of the feedback has been quite positive that I've gotten in critical reviews, but not everybody. There's some people who it's not for them. But I knew going into this, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? Because it's very quirky, it's very different. So there's no way that it's going to grab everybody. But I think that some people just really love the same thing that I love, the kind of thing that I was going for. I think is this mix of these various elements that we've been describing, and so I'm just happy for those people who do appreciate that and get some fun and excitement out of seeing that come to life the way I wanted it to come to life. Knowing that for some people they might think it's too serious. Some people think it's too many silly moments. Some people think no, it's not silly enough. I mean, I have gotten some of those comments saying no, it should have been the whole thing should have been just silly, just silly, and and just a comedy. And some people say no, you shouldn't have had any comedy. Just made it all serious. Well, who knows? I mean, that people have different things, but for me, striking a balance between those was very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly going into like the more serious stuff with the Dummy Detective, your other influence that you said was the Maltese Falcon and other film noirs. Like with the Maltese Falcon and a lot of other ones as well, like the film doesn't kind of hang about with the murder of Humphrey Bogart's partner. It's just kind of like one shot, like with the classic thing of you're only able to see like the gun of the murder in shot, and you have like a similar thing in your film with like one of the Scallywag members dies and you see what might be a knife on the edge of the shot in silhouette on the stairs. That was kind of a really beautifully framed shot for me. So were there things like that were kind of important to you from a writing perspective to kind of keep this very classic feel to the film?
Yes, I definitely wanted it shadowy and atmospheric, and the cinematography, therefore, was important. And I'm very happy with how it was done, especially because I made the choice not to do it in black and white. Initially, when I first wrote the first draft or drafts of this, I had planned to do it in black and white because I wanted to really look very much like a real film noir. But eventually, I came to the decision that for marketing reasons, I don't want to limit myself. I was afraid that so especially young people today don't watch black and white, and a lot of them would never even think of watching a black and white movie, unfortunately. But then I thought there's actually an advantage to. I mean, it's not all just in the hopes of marketing it better. I mean, that was one consideration, but also I grew to like the idea of modernizing it a bit and thinking, well, I'm not really recreating a film noir; it's neo noir, and so let's take advantage of color too, because black and white has its glorious kind of beauty in the starkness of it, but color has so much you can do with it you cannot do with black and white. So let's use that. Let's use color for the kind of richness that it can give the movie, but still have some of the feeling in the way that it's shot of the way that a noir would be shot.
I also kind of really liked the character work in the Maltese Falcon, especially like the first half an hour. Like nobody can trust anyone, everyone's lying to each other. You never know who to believe. But with like Bogart's character, he just takes everything in his stride, and you get the sense with each character he meets, you feel like he's seen it all before and can handle everything. But when he encounters Peter Lorre, you mentioned this off air, Ed, like he takes the gun off him and he says he wants to search the office, and he's got the gun pointed at Bogart. And he just kind of just laughs it off, and he's not concerned at all, saying he's got nothing to hide. So from an acting point of view, what did you take from that performance, Ed, and kind of likewise, Jonathan and Ed, likewise with like Peter Lorre from these type of like noir-y films to keep this tone of the film?
I mean, from my perspective, I mean, it was really just, if you think about the situation, it was sort of like, well, you're accusing me of something that, prove it. If you think I did this, I've been living here. I'm a resident here. The few people here know me. I'm doing my radio show. I mean, I don't have to answer this and I don't have to put up with it. Not only that, the radio show is the most damn it, it's the most important thing in the world. And if you're going to delay me from it, that's too bad. I don't care what, the law says it's allowed to do. It's not going to work here. So I think a lot of it was not even so much bravura or trying to be a hero or anything. It was just basically, no, this is wrong. This is what I have to do now, and you're going to have to deal with it. So deal with it. So, and again, this is a testament to Jonathan's script that, all that sort of stuff, you could easily, as we say, as actors, justify. So it was, it all worked out.
I want to mention Yuri Bathian is the cinematographer because I did mention that I'm very happy with how that was done, and that was him. So he deserves a lot of credit. Also, Michael Fisher, the gaffer, lighting person, they work together very well. And so the two of them, I think, did a marvelous job on my tiny indie budget. Pretty amazing, I think, how they made it look like, I think, a much bigger budget than it really was.
And also the place that we filmed was very atmospheric. It was this old Victorian bed and breakfast, and just sort of lent itself to, the setting, the world's end, the inn.
Yeah, it was a great setting.
Yeah, I was kind of, I do want to explore America more, but it definitely felt like an old English cottage or something. I was like, you sure you shot in America?
Interestingly, I originally, in the earlier drafts, I had it set in England, in the English countryside, as more of a nod to Agatha Christie, the cozy mystery kind of thing. And because there's so many British mysteries, in the cottage mystery thing. But it was actually much later, closer to shooting, that I decided, for practical reasons, to make it America, rural America, rural New York, actually, because I wanted a feel of the city, noir being very connected with city environments, but still in a rural area, not far from New York City. So that's what I eventually settled on. But it was influenced very much by the Agatha Christie cozy mystery, cottage, English mystery thing.
Yeah. It's interesting with kind of watching the film with what Agatha Christie kind of does, and when she kind of draws all the characters together, and you kind of do that very early on in the film as well, especially towards the end, obviously, that's what Christie does so well. But tell me about, like, just kind of bringing all these characters together quite early on. Was that just to just get everyone in the room early and to introduce everyone? What's the thinking behind that?
Well, yeah, that was a practical consideration with wanting a way to introduce all those characters without having too much exposition, just describing people, just like, okay, present them, get them together so that people, the audience, can get to know them quickly to some extent. But it also, I think, plot-wise, it served a good function because it's a little bit of that 10 Little Indians thing that okay, you see everybody before people start to drop away.
So looking in more detail towards your film then, The Dummy Detectives, like, I love the opening scenes with Trillo and Chloe Lake, who Deborah plays. You have that kind of great sexual tension immediately that's not played for laughs. Like, immediately you're like, similar to the Maltese Falcon, you don't trust the lead female character in Chloe Lake in what she's saying and asking for. Then it's kind of reinforced even more in that first kind of bedroom scene at the World's End. Like, how important was it to get kind of the chemistry right in those scenes to establish this mistrust and mysterious feeling you get in, like, film noirs?
Yeah, well, the casting was crucial for these roles. Ed's role as Elliot Black, and for Deborah Twist as Chloe Lake. And I really feel I lucked out with both of these. I think they both played their roles just as I imagined it, or better. They really, really nailed those roles, both Ed and Deborah. She was, yes, she needed to be this classic femme fatale, very dangerous, very alluring, and also very dangerous, very mysterious, all those elements. But I'm also parodying it at the same time. So it had to, she had to play it. I wanted her to play it a bit over the top, but not too far. Not to get silly with it, but to kind of be, a bit of an exaggeration. And you had asked me before about the whole concept in general, and this role in particular was very tricky to be able to play it that way. I think she played it just right.
Was there any kind of like characters from film history, film noirs that she was drawing from in particular, or like from the character in Maltese Falcon? Or
yeah, I mentioned that role and a few others, and also Jessica Rabbit
okay,
from Who Roger Rabbit. That's also a neo noir.
yeah.
So yeah, as far as the over the top part of it, because that was way over the top. But I did tell her, draw a little bit from that too, a little bit of that influence.
Nice. I really liked what Sean Young brought to her character here. She seemed to be having a great time, like everyone in this film. But with Sean's character, she's certainly like a character that your suspicions are drawn towards very early on, with her writing the murders in her little notebook to inspire her own novel. So how much fun was it writing scenes for someone so iconic? Or was there a lot of pressure involved in that when you've cast someone like Sean Young? You're like, oh, okay, I've got to get this right.
Yeah, the casting came last, so I had written that role and rewritten through all the drafts over many years, and that was all set. And then that's before I had the opportunity, or it just presented itself through Deborah, because they're personal friends from other projects, other films they've worked on together, Deborah Twist and Sean Young. And so I cast Deborah first in that role, and I hadn't yet cast Mrs. Hubbard, Harriet Hubbard, the innkeeper. And so Deb just said, well, how about I think I can get Sean Young for you. I think she's going to like the script. If she likes the script, I think she'll do it. And, okay, great. So I had that in through her. She sent her the script. Luckily, Sean liked the script, and called me and said, "Yeah, I'd love to do this." And that was a great find because she was wonderful in the role.
How was it working with her, just generally?
It was a great experience. She's a consummate artist. She's great at her craft. And, she had the big career, as a lot of people will know, in the 80s and 90s. And then she kind of disappeared from movies for quite a while until very recently. She did one or two other little indies. And then she did one right after mine. Ed could tell you about that. She appears in another film Ed did, shot right after mine. Also Sean Young as a role in that. But yeah, she brought all her experience, and she was also very dedicated to getting the role right. I mean, she asked me a lot of questions about, what I had in mind for this character, which I respected. Someone of her stature and experience, I didn't think necessarily would even ask me anything about it, but she did. She wanted to know, do you like this? Do you like that? I feel like doing this. But so yeah, she was very professional and very pleasant, and easy to work with.
Yeah, she was very good on set, and she was very good. Particularly that there were some younger people too. She was very mentoring. Like during food breaks, she'd always like go to the front of the line, grab food for the the crew who were still adjusting cameras, dealing with sound, things like that. Make sure that they were fed before the cast was fed, and very good at giving little pointers and everything. So and she's just a lot of fun. She's a unique personality.
Yeah, a consummate professional, it sounds like. So there's a really interesting kind of almost dream sequence in the film where like Trillo is talking about the case with his dummies in his bedroom, and there's this kind of fantastic kind of lens flare effect when they're talking about the case. Was there any kind of inspiration behind that scene? Where kind of that idea, where did that idea come from?
Well, the technical aspect of how they shot it with the lens flare, that's not me, because I'm not a cinematographer and don't know that much about it. So that was Yuri. I think I think it was Yuri's idea originally, I believe, but also exactly how to shoot it. Of course, he discussed with Rob Margolis, the director. So, they kind of figured it out with the help of Michael Fisher, the gaffer. So they put their three heads together to think of the best. But all I knew is that I wanted it to have a dreamy look to it, because I wanted this, which recurs a few times, these little scenes with the dummies apparently coming to life and talking autonomously. I wanted it to be something where the audience will also need to wonder and form their own opinions. Could that really be happening in this universe, or is it only in Trillo's head? So it needed to be kind of murky and dreamlike. And so that's all. I said, guys, however you can make it look like that, it's up to you.
Yeah, it looked amazing to me. It's quite... I've made a few films in the past, and it's kind of hard to get that effect right.
Well, what they did too is like in the scene where my dummy is turning on me when we're performing, they used like a little prism or a crystal or something, so sort of aimed the camera there, and it reflected. So you got like this sort of split screen image, but slightly distorted, which was very, very cool and very effective.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it, because you kind of get that kind of sort of almost fabrication veil almost on the dummy characters to give them even more kind of mystique about them. What's interesting as well for me, Jonathan, the two films that come to mind when I think about like films about ventriloquism, and we talked about it briefly, Ed, before we recorded, before you came on, Jonathan, was Magic, the Anthony Hopkins one, and some other horror films like Dead Silent, where kind of the dummies end up kind of attacking, the victims physically, or whatever. Was there a conscious effort, like, not to really look back at those kind of the horror side of ventriloquism in the film world for you?
Well, I didn't study any of those and model this after any of those. I'm very aware of that trope and that cliche actually about the dummy takes over, the mad ventriloquist, the dummy takes over, that's been done many times. So I've seen some of them, but I haven't seen all of them. You mentioned Dead Silent. I never saw that. And there's also, there's the Great Gobbo back in 1929, I think, one of the very first talkies. It was also about a ventriloquist and his dummy takes over kind of thing. But I read about that, never saw it. And then there was also Dead of Night, I believe it's called, another film that the same thing with Michael Redgrave, same theme, But I didn't see it again. I did see the Twilight Zone episode called The Dummy. It's a great episode. And I saw Magic, so well aware of that trope. But I didn't want to copy it the way I wanted to do it a little bit differently, and I wanted it to be a little bit more sort of gradual about or questioning about whether the dummy's taking over or not. And then I also wanted it to be to see that the audience to see in stages what that path looks like by having the Elliot Black character who's a ventriloquist who's already given up the game, given up the fight to keep his sanity. So, given into the dummy, he can't perform anymore because the dummy has taken over, and he's afraid of what would happen if he ever picks up that dummy again, ever throws his voice again. So, and I wanted to have that scene. I thought would be a climactic scene within the whole arc of talking about that, of Elliot Black and Trillo talking about that, where Trillo is clearly scared that this is my future. I'm going to become like Elliot Black, like my dummy's going to take over. So he's deathly afraid of that, but also can't reveal it because he's supposed to be the detective. He's supposed to be cool. He's supposed to be in charge. So losing control is even more embarrassing for people to see that, for someone like Trillo, who has to be sort of an authority figure.
Yeah, I loved a few of those scenes between you guys. I love the scene where like Trillo confronts Mr. Black about kind of the murders, and Mr. Black basically says, what happened to me with my dummy will happen to you, and they'll both, we're both kind of touched by the devil. Mr. Black's dummy basically turns on him and embarrasses him on the stage. So Mr. Black won't vent any more into him. So there's almost this kind of deep psychological split of personality that has happened with Mr. Black, and you can tell that Mr. Black has kind of touched a nerve in Trillo in a way. Like he's afraid that it could happen to him maybe at one point. Definitely one of my favorite scenes here. So kind of how difficult was it to get that right from an acting point of view, Ed, and a writing point of view, Jonathan?
From an acting point of view, Jonathan was very specific about sort of how they want it delivered. Not so much the the acting itself, but sort of like the pacing of it and that building up intensity of it. That Mr. Black's almost working himself up into a froth of indignation about this, and and then confronting Trillo with well, you may go through the same thing yourself. At the same time, I mean, Black is also a bit offended because he's trying to this is a rare opportunity. He gets to talk ventriloquist to ventriloquist and talk shop and actually talk to someone who may understand what he's gone through, and instead he's turning it around and trying to find evidence that I may that Mr. Black is the murderer or something. So the scene itself was really a question of sort of like getting sort of like under his head, but at the same time keeping the pace up and just and trying to keep it sort of intense but not too dark.
Yeah, that was a very important scene for me. That's, I guess, how would I say? It's sort of the soul of the movie, I feel, is Elliot Black. I always felt about that. There's so much else going on, but because Trillo is dealing with the psychological issues and fears, and I think without spelling it out, people could sense that he's not a very socially adept person, and he feels quite isolated in his own personal life. That scene between Trillo and Elliot Black, the confrontation in Black's room, is a crucial scene. And I thought of it I felt about it as something that sort of expresses the crux of the movie to me, which is the psychological aspect of it, which what makes it a psychological thriller coming to light right there. Trillo was very scared of losing his control over his dummy and the dummy taking over. So that harkens back to the old trope about what happens to ventriloquists. But here in this movie and in this setting, Elliot Black presents the future to Trillo. What he's afraid will be the future, what's going to happen to him. And so Trillo is still trying to hold on desperately to control, to power, to his authority figure as being a detective. And when Black confronts him and draws out his fear, Trillo's own fear of what's going to happen to him, losing control of his dummy, then Trillo's faced with a very stressful, awkward situation where he's feeling he's losing control even about his appearance, even about his struggle. He doesn't even want people to know how much he's struggling about this internally. But I was mentioning, too, that Elliot Black, I feel, is kind of the soul of the movie, his character, because the movie, to me, deals very much with isolation, with loneliness, with disconnectedness. And for that reason, too, I never wanted it to get too silly. I wanted it to be I wanted to have some, what I think of, comic relief, but I didn't want that to be the gist of it, because to me, at least, it's a serious movie in essence, because what I'm addressing, or I meant to address, is this whole issue of how we're all going through our lives separated from everyone else, and there is so much loneliness, so much isolation, so much disconnectedness that so many people, I think everybody can identify with that to one extent or another. I mean, everybody goes through those feelings, some more than others, but a lot of people desperately, go through those kind of feelings and suffer greatly. So I wanted to explore that, to have people be able to put themselves in those characters' heads. And Elliot Black is the culmination of it, because he's the threatened future of what lies in store for Trillo, reaching the point where he's completely separated himself from society, and he just lives in a little room in an inn. He barely, he's maybe not 100% isolated. He talks a little bit with the innkeeper and occasional guest fleetingly, but so he's 99% isolated from the world, and he doesn't step outside the inn. And he even his little radio show, he has no idea whether anyone's listening ever. But at the same time, he hasn't given up. He's not capable of giving up the longing for it. So to me, that's ultimately a tragedy. It's even more so a comedy in my mind, because it's a tragic situation. that he's, the fact that he has this longing for old music. He has this obsession with old pop and jazz standards. So it's also something whimsical. It's something nostalgic, So again, something that's not here, something in the past. That's his one connection. Something of music style that doesn't exist anymore, except people can recreate it. But the style is not current, So it's another element of the disconnect for him, that he wants to share this love for nostalgic things of the past with people who may not even be there. So, a lot of things to me are sad about the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of liked this kind of almost mutual respect between your two characters in that last scene where Trillo kind of broadcasts Mr. Black's last radio show, kind of expressing his sympathies and recognizing his kind of psychological struggles. And I love that moment where the ceiling is kind of leaking and it drips on Dinky, the dummy, creating tears. That was without giving, obviously, everything away. But that was kind of such a beautiful moment for me. How important was it to get kind of that last scene right in the writing, both for both of your characters?
Oh, the last scene in the movie, where Charles talking by himself, the monologue. Well, yeah, that was crucial because it was just me by myself, so I couldn't play off of these other wonderful actors I was working with. It's easier when you have a great acting partner you're doing a scene with. For me, it's easier, but there it was all on me, and it was a very crucial scene. So I was very concerned, will I to get this right? And well, hopefully I did. I mean, I'm pleased with how it turned out. One thing about it was that we were under the gun in the 11-day shoot for this whole movie. So we couldn't do a lot of takes of everything, including that scene. I remember when I had to shoot it, it was like, well, do 3 takes, I think, of that, and that's it. Then we got to move on. But yeah, I think it worked. And of course, the editing is important too, how it was edited. And that final shot that you alluded to, that was also, I wanted to do it that way to still, to me, it would that it made it even sadder. Now, some people might feel that no, you wanted to really see Dinky cry as if it's not have any kind of physical extra explanation for it. That would have, like a magical moment. I mean, I thought about that, and I mean that could have been, that's a matter of opinion, because it could have worked nicely that way too, as a magical moment to end the film on. But I opted for not doing that way because I didn't want to break the universe that I created for this particular film, which is that there could be a physical explanation for everything, but still, that doesn't mean that there isn't something magical going on. I wanted it to still remain a question. So, and then I thought in one way it would be even more of a, I don't know, touching moment or sad moment. I hoped for people to momentarily think, so the dummies are real, and it's a real deal. But then take it away from them. They say, well, not necessarily. There's a physical. So, like, I don't know. To me, that just made it something a little bit more of an urgent moment of maybe pang of sadness to the viewer too, that maybe he's not real. But then again, it's still maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. What I also kind of liked about that kind of last shot is that there's a tinge of kind of comedy in there as well for me. The fact that you get the drips from like a leaky tap somewhere upstairs. I thought that was quite a nice touch. So one of the other aspects of the film which I kind of found quite interesting is that with like kind of the psychology of the other characters, that especially your two characters, like the way you interact with the other kind of suspect characters who are not aware of kind of your ventriloquism and how it kind of works and in your kind of psychology around it. Can you talk about kind of the psychology of Trillo's character and how kind of the suspects react and interact with the dummy character and your character, Mr. Black, in terms of his ventriloquism as well? Let's go with you, Ed, first.
Well, actually, to Mr. Black, it wasn't that it didn't seem that unusual to be talking to the dummy. I mean,
Mm,
I think other characters are put off from it first. I think Mr. Black kind of falls right into it because as I recall, I don't even think there's anything where I even make any comment about the fact that I'm talking to a dummy. I'm not talking to a person, whereas most of the other
mm.
characters do. So for him, yeah, why not? I mean, I know this thing can happen, so why shouldn't Mr. Swade be leading the investigation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, Jonathan, how do you kind of get that balance right in keeping, I don't know, the integrity of the other characters interacting with Mr. Swade, or not? Like with Deborah's character, she kind of almost refuses to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I think has a natural comedy to it. We were
Yeah.
talking before. I wanted to utilize things that moments that would be funny just because of the absurd situation, rather than trying to go for jokes outright. And so, I think there are those funny moments when other suspects are talking to the dummy and then not realizing or catching themselves. That happens a number of times, like, oh wait, I should be talking to Trillo. Well, who should I be talking to? Or so this it serves a function practically too with interrogating suspects, that it throws them off guard. So if they've concocted an alibi that's false or something, it makes it harder for them to keep track of what they wanted to say or what they're trying to hide when they're busy being confused about who should they be talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few kind of great visual comedy moments. Of course, Ed, you're on the floor a lot. But I loved like the giant syringe scene with Dr. Cox and Mrs. Grimsley. I thought that was great. Were there any other kind of visual comedy gags that you're quite proud of, guys? I mean, I love the fact that one character gets murdered by a frozen pie. That was another highlight.
Well, the pie, actually the pies too. I mean, which was actually what you were talking about before, about sort of introducing all the characters. I mean, putting them in some situation where they're dealing with something sort of disgusting, like these frozen pies. I thought as a prop that was actually very clever. But I can't think of anything like syringe-like.
Yeah, I don't know. Visual, not sure. Comedy wise, nothing comes to mind in particular other than the ones you mentioned.
Yeah. I always kind of like to highlight my favorite lines on the show as well when we do the regular episodes. And a few of mine are, someone's bound to be murdered again and she wants to be alone. That was a great one. A great funny one for me was, fake my ass. I guess your anus is as fake as your medical degree, to Mr. Cox. That was a great one. Have you got like a gag, a joke that you're very proud of, Jonathan?
Oh, I think there are not so many like gags per se, as we're just discussing, is more situational comedy. So I don't know how much, like, to the viewers or the listeners right now, I don't know if I have any kind of great lines that's going to just put people rolling with laughter. It's more like you got to see it, you got to in context, I mean, it's an example is when Trillo runs to Chloe's room and someone has apparently tried to attack her by stabbing her, but in her bed, but it wasn't her. She was out of the room and she had pillows. People were stabbing the pillows. And so he pulls out and he sees there's so many pillows underneath the blanket. And he says to Chloe, oh, why do you have so many? And he's just doesn't even finish the sentence. She says, I like pillows. Now that I think it's funny. A lot of people have told me that they think that's a funny moment. It's not that it's a great joke. It's just like in the context of watching them, and he's flabbergasted so much he stops mid-sentence, and she finishes it with kind of obvious remark. So things like that. I don't know what to call it, but it's a situational kind of, and that also is I say a visual joke because that's what makes it funny when you're seeing the pillows.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll leave it there with the discussion then, guys. Are there any other projects you want to tell us about that you can talk about that's coming up, or Ed?
I've got a film called Top Hate, which is actually it's a comedy, sort of it's a murder mystery about a plot to kill Fred Astoria, based on Fred Astaire, but for legal reasons we couldn't use a real name. So actually Sean has a very funny cameo appearance in that. The man who wrote it and produced it actually his name's Joe Queen, and he's actually a very well-known American humor writer. He's written for pretty much every publication. And when I told him I was doing Dummy Detective, he had interviewed Sean about 40 years ago for Rolling Stone magazine. So I was doing a play at the time that we were filming Dummy Detective. Sean came to see one of my performances, and Joe was there too. They met, and she asked to be in his next, in this film that we're working on. But anyhow, we're showing at a film festival in Manhattan on June 17th at Cinema Village, part of the Manhattan Film Festival. So if you're in the area, please come. It's actually a very funny film.
Nice. Jonathan, anything in the works for you?
Well, right now I'm busy promoting the Dummy Detective, so I'm just focusing on that. I've written a couple of other feature film screenplays featuring starring Trillo and Sway, but if and when I'll ever get to produce them, that remains to be seen. I think the main thing now is to promote this one, because I think this one is going to have to be quite successful in order to draw the attention of investors or producers or a movie studio to back any future project. So right now it's just full steam ahead promoting the Dummy Detective.
Excellent. Right, I think we'll leave it there then, people. A really, really fascinating film. Lots to enjoy in this. So if you're looking for something a little bit different in kind of the detective Agatha Christie film noir kind of genre, definitely check this one out. I very much enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. I guess it's time to say goodbye. It's goodbye from Jonathan and Ed. See you later, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I would love to talk about future projects with you. It's been a great discussion. Bye-bye.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That's it for the interview. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us if the film will be on your watch list. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit the like button and comment there. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.